A retreat from reality. Natalie Brooks pressed her forehead against the cool window of the luxury coach bus, watching Denver's skyline fade into rolling foothills. The company retreat was supposed to be a chance to unwind, but spending 3 days in close quarters with Cameron Mitchell felt more like a test of endurance than a vacation. At 26, Natalie had clawed her way up from intern to senior marketing strategist at Redwood Industries in just 4 years. Every campaign she touched turned to gold, every client she managed became a long-term partner. Yet none of that seemed to matter when Cameron was in the room. Cameron Mitchell was a legend in the business world. At 35, he had transformed his family's struggling timber company into a sustainable luxury brand empire worth billions. He was brilliant, driven, and utterly intimidating. His steel blue eyes could dissect a presentation in seconds, finding weaknesses nobody else saw. Natalie had spent countless late nights in his office, refining strategies until they were perfect. She told herself the flutter in her chest when he praised her work was just professional pride. Nothing more. The Rocky Mountain resort sprawled across 200 acres of pristine wilderness. Log cabins dotted the landscape, connected by winding stone paths. Crystal-clear streams cut through ancient pine forests, and beyond it all, the mountains rose like silent guardians. The discovery. After a full day of team-building exercises and strategic planning sessions, Natalie needed space to breathe. Cameron had been particularly intense during her presentation, pushing her harder than usual. His questions were sharp, his expectations impossible. She had performed flawlessly, but the pressure left her exhausted. That evening, while other executives gathered in the main lodge for cocktails, Natalie slipped away. She had noticed a trail during their arrival, barely visible between 2 massive boulders. Something about it called to her. The path wound deeper into the forest than she expected. 40 minutes of steady hiking brought her to a place that took her breath away. A mountain lake stretched before her, perfectly still and impossibly clear. Massive granite cliffs rose on 3 sides, creating a natural amphitheater. A small waterfall trickled down the far wall, its gentle sound the only break in the profound silence. The sun hung low, painting everything in shades of amber and rose. The water looked absolutely inviting after the hot day and stressful meetings. Natalie glanced around carefully. The resort was at least 2 miles away. The executives were all busy networking over expensive whiskey. Nobody would come this far. Nobody would even know this place existed. Before doubt could stop her, she began removing her clothes. The professional pencil skirt came off first, then the silk blouse she had ironed so carefully that morning. Her practical undergarments followed. Soon she stood completely bare under the Colorado sky, feeling more free than she had in months. Into the water. The water was shockingly cold at first contact, fed by mountain snowmelt. Natalie gasped but pushed forward, letting her body adjust. Within moments, the temperature felt perfect, invigorating. She dove under the surface, feeling the stress and tension wash away. When she emerged, she floated on her back, watching clouds drift across the patch of visible sky. This was exactly what she needed. No presentations, no impossible standards, no Cameron Mitchell dissecting every word she said. She swam lazy circles, occasionally diving down to touch the smooth stones at the bottom. The waterfall became her destination. She let the gentle cascade massage her shoulders, closing her eyes and losing herself completely in the moment. Time disappeared. She might have been there 20 minutes or 2 hours. All that mattered was the water, the silence, and the absolute privacy. Eventually, the fading light reminded her that she needed to return before anyone noticed her absence. Natalie swam toward the shore where she had left her clothes, preparing to climb out. The water was waist-deep when she stood, rivulets streaming down her body. She pushed wet hair from her face, reaching for the towel she had brought. Then she saw him. The impossible moment. Cameron Mitchell stood at the edge of the clearing, frozen mid-step on the trail. His usual composed expression had completely shattered. His eyes were wide, lips slightly parted in shock. One hand gripped a low-hanging branch as if he needed physical support. Time stopped. Natalie's breath caught in her throat. Her heart hammered so violently she thought it might break through her ribs. Instinctively, her arms crossed over her chest, a futile attempt at modesty. Heat flooded her face, spreading down her neck and across her chest. Of all the people in the world who could have found this place, why did it have to be him? Her boss. The man whose approval she craved professionally. The man she absolutely could not afford to have see her like this. Cameron looked equally stunned. His legendary control had vanished completely. He stared at her with an intensity that made her skin prickle, an expression she had never seen on his face before. Raw. Unguarded. Almost hungry. Several eternal seconds passed. Neither moved. Neither breathed. Then reality crashed back. Natalie dropped back into the water with a splash, submerging herself to her shoulders. Her mind raced with panic and mortification. This could not be happening. This was a nightmare. Her career was over. Everything she had worked for, destroyed in one terrible moment. Finding words. Cameron finally found his voice, though it came out rough and uncertain. Natalie. I had no idea anyone was here. I just followed the trail. I'll leave right now. But his feet did not move. He remained rooted to the spot, still staring at her with that strange, intense expression. Could you please turn around? Natalie managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper. He blinked, seeming to come back to himself. Yes. Of course. I'm so sorry. He turned his back, shoulders rigid with tension. Natalie moved as quickly as she could toward her clothes, but her hands shook so badly she could barely grip anything. The wet skin made everything harder. Her bra refused to fasten. Her blouse stuck to damp shoulders. She fumbled with buttons and zippers, silently cursing. Is everything okay? Cameron asked from the clearing, still facing away. Fine, she lied, finally getting her skirt zipped. Just give me another minute. The silence between them felt heavy with everything they were not saying. Natalie could feel the weight of what had just happened, how it changed something fundamental between them. Finally dressed, though disheveled and still damp, she took a deep breath. Okay. You can turn around now. The confession. Cameron turned slowly. His face had regained some composure, but his eyes still held that raw quality. They stood 10 feet apart, the setting sun casting long shadows between them. I'm truly sorry for intruding, he said formally, falling back on professional distance. I couldn't sleep after today's sessions. I needed to clear my head, and I saw this trail during our arrival. I never imagined someone else would be here. I needed to clear my head too, Natalie admitted, unable to meet his gaze. Today was intense. I was too hard on you during your presentation. The words came out quickly, as if he had been holding them back. Your strategy was brilliant. I pushed because I couldn't stand the thought of anyone finding a flaw in your work. I wanted it to be absolutely perfect so nobody could question your talent. Natalie finally looked up at him, surprised. What? Cameron ran a hand through his dark hair, a gesture of frustration she had never seen from him. How much did you see? The question escaped before she could stop it. His jaw tightened. Enough to know that I will never be able to look at you the same way again. The honesty in his voice stole her breath. This was not her boss speaking. This was something else entirely. Something dangerous and thrilling that made her heart race for completely different reasons. We should get back, Natalie said quickly, sensing she was standing at the edge of something that could destroy everything. They'll wonder where we are. Or they'll assume exactly what people have been whispering about for months, Cameron said quietly. Natalie's heart stopped. What do people whisper? He took a step closer. That I favor you. That I give you opportunities others don't get. That there's a reason you're always the one working late with me, the one whose opinion I ask for on every major decision, the one I trust with the most important projects. That's ridiculous, she protested, but her voice shook. I've earned everything through hard work. I know you have. Another step closer. But that doesn't change the fact that part of their gossip is true. What part? Cameron stood directly in front of her now. She could see water droplets caught in his dark hair from a brief rain shower. Could smell his cologne mixed with pine and mountain air. The part where you're special to me, he said softly. Where you've been special since your first interview, when you challenged my entire marketing philosophy and refused to back down even when I tried to intimidate you. The part where every late-night meeting is partly an excuse to spend more time with you. The part where I lie awake thinking about you instead of quarterly projections. Natalie could barely process his words. Cameron, we can't have this conversation. You're my boss. There are rules. Policies you yourself created. I know. His voice held an edge of frustration. Policies I made after watching my father nearly destroy this company with a reckless affair. I swore I'd never let personal feelings compromise Redwood Industries. But seeing you today, so free and real and absolutely beautiful, I can't pretend anymore. Pretend what? She whispered. That I'm not completely in love with you. The words hung in the air between them, a confession and a curse wrapped together. Everything Natalie had secretly dreamed about was suddenly real, offered openly, but accepting it meant risking everything she had built. Before she could respond, voices echoed through the forest. Someone was coming, drawn by curiosity or concern about their absence. Cameron immediately stepped back, his expression shifting back to professional neutrality. We should return separately. You go first. I'll wait 15 minutes. Natalie nodded, still speechless from his confession. She started down the trail but paused after a few steps, looking back at him. He stood beside the lake, hands in his pockets, looking more vulnerable than she had ever imagined possible. Cameron, she called softly. Just so you know, you're not the only one who's been pretending. Then she hurried down the path, leaving him alone in the fading light. Both of them forever changed by what happened at the hidden lake. Both knowing that tomorrow would bring consequences neither could predict. But for this one moment, the truth was finally spoken, and there was no taking it back. Morning after silence. Natalie barely slept. She lay in her hotel bed replaying Cameron's words over and over until they lost all meaning and then gained it back tenfold. He loved her. Cameron Mitchell, billionaire CEO, the man whose approval she had chased for 4 years, was in love with her. She dressed with extra care that morning, choosing a charcoal gray suit that made her look professional and untouchable. Armor against the feelings threatening to overwhelm her. Her hands trembled as she applied makeup, covering the dark circles under her eyes. The breakfast hall buzzed with conversation when she entered. Executives clustered around tables, discussing yesterday's sessions over coffee and pastries. Natalie scanned the room and found Cameron at the head table, leading a discussion about sustainable sourcing. He looked completely composed, as if nothing had happened. Only she noticed the barely perceptible tightness around his eyes, the way his coffee cup shook slightly when he lifted it. Their eyes met across the room for one electric second before Natalie looked away and found a seat at the opposite end. Patricia's suspicions. Patricia Hammond watched the entire exchange with narrowed eyes. At 43, the VP of Operations had spent 15 years climbing Redwood's corporate ladder. She was brilliant, ruthless, and had been positioning herself as Cameron's right hand for the past 3 years. The arrival of young, talented Natalie had disrupted those plans considerably. Patricia had noticed things others missed. The way Cameron's voice softened when he spoke to Natalie. How he always positioned himself near her during meetings. The frequency of their late-night work sessions. She had been waiting for them to make a mistake that she could exploit. "Natalie, you look exhausted," Patricia said sweetly as she sat down beside her. "I hope the mountain air isn't too much for you. Not everyone is cut out for these retreats." Natalie lifted her chin. "Actually, I slept perfectly. I find the environment incredibly refreshing. Sometimes the best clarity comes from stepping outside your comfort zone." Patricia's smile did not reach her eyes. "Speaking of stepping outside comfort zones, I noticed both you and Cameron were absent from cocktails last evening. I hope everything was all right." "I went for a hike," Natalie replied evenly. "I needed some exercise after sitting in meetings all day." "How dedicated," Patricia murmured. "And Cameron?" "I have no idea what Mr. Mitchell did with his evening. Perhaps you should ask him directly." The presentation. The morning session focused on European expansion strategies. Cameron had specifically requested that Natalie present her vision for breaking into the luxury markets of Paris, Milan, and London. She had worked on this proposal for 3 months, refining every detail until it was flawless. As Natalie stood before the room of executives, she felt Cameron's eyes on her. Not the critical gaze of a boss evaluating an employee, but something warmer. Supportive. Proud. She delivered her presentation with confidence, backing every claim with data and market research. Her strategy was innovative, combining traditional luxury marketing with cutting-edge digital engagement. Several executives nodded in approval as she spoke. Then Patricia raised her hand. "This is all very impressive for someone with limited international experience," Patricia began, her tone dripping with false encouragement. "But I'm concerned about the financial projections. These numbers seem overly optimistic for someone who has never actually managed a European campaign. Perhaps someone with more seasoned judgment should review this before we move forward." The implication was clear. Natalie was too young, too inexperienced, too favored by Cameron to be trusted with something this important. Before Natalie could respond, Cameron spoke. "Patricia, I've reviewed these projections extensively. They're based on solid research and conservative estimates. In fact, Natalie's numbers are more realistic than the European expansion proposal you submitted last quarter, which overestimated market penetration by nearly 40%. The room went silent. Cameron rarely called out executives so directly in public forums. Patricia's face flushed. "I was simply expressing concern for the company's interests." "And I appreciate your diligence," Cameron said smoothly. "But I trust Natalie's judgment on this matter. Her work has consistently exceeded expectations. If you have specific concerns about the data, please submit them in writing and we'll address them individually. Otherwise, let's allow her to finish." Natalie completed her presentation to genuine applause. Several executives approached afterward with questions and compliments. But she could feel Patricia's anger radiating from across the room. She had just made a powerful enemy. The confrontation. After lunch, Natalie escaped to her room, desperate for a moment of privacy. She had barely kicked off her heels when someone knocked on the door. Cameron stood in the hallway, tie loosened, looking agitated in a way she had never witnessed. "We need to talk. May I come in?" Every professional instinct screamed that this was a terrible idea. But Natalie stepped aside and let him enter. He paced the room like a caged animal, all his usual control stripped away. "I couldn't sleep last night. I kept replaying what I said to you, wondering if I had destroyed everything we've built together." "Cameron, stop." Natalie held up her hand. "We both know this is impossible. You're the CEO. I barely moved past entry level 3 years ago. The power imbalance alone makes this completely inappropriate, not to mention company policy." "I wrote those policies," he said bitterly. "After my father nearly bankrupted Redwood Industries because of an affair with a board member. I swore I would never let personal feelings jeopardize this company." And yet here I am, breaking my own rules. He stopped pacing and looked at her directly. But Natalie, I broke those rules months ago. Every time I found an excuse to keep you working late just so I could hear your thoughts about everything from market trends to your favorite movies. Every time I pushed you harder than anyone else because I needed you to be undeniably excellent so nobody could question your place here. You asked about movies? Natalie's lips curved into a small smile despite everything. I thought that was just small talk. It wasn't. He moved closer. You mentioned in your interview that you loved classic films. I watched every movie you named just so I would have a reason to talk to you about something other than work. I've never done that for anyone. Never cared enough to try. Natalie's resolve was crumbling. All the logical reasons to maintain distance seemed insignificant compared to the truth she had been denying for months. This could destroy both our careers, she whispered. The board will force you to choose between the company and me. Then I choose you. The certainty in his voice took her breath away. Every single time. Redwood Industries was built by my grandfather and expanded by my father. I've dedicated my entire adult life to making it the best company in the industry. But I would give it all up for one honest moment with you. He stepped closer, so close she could feel the warmth radiating from him. Yesterday at the lake, I saw you completely free. Real. And I realized I've never been free a single day in my life. Every decision, every relationship, every moment has been calculated for the company's benefit. Everything except what I feel for you. That's the only real thing I have. The photograph. Natalie reached up to touch his face, her fingers tracing the line of his jaw. I'm terrified. Not of losing my job. I'm scared that this is real and then it will fall apart because the world won't let us keep it. Then we fight, Cameron said quietly, pulling her close. We fight harder than we've ever fought for anything. When he kissed her, it felt like coming home and jumping off a cliff simultaneously. His lips were gentle at first, asking permission, giving her one last chance to pull away. But Natalie melted into him, her arms wrapping around his neck, and the kiss deepened into something that spoke of months of suppressed longing. They broke apart, breathing heavily, foreheads pressed together. Cameron's hands cradled her face gently, and tears pricked Natalie's eyes. We do this right, he said firmly. No hiding, no secret meetings. I'll speak with the board, disclose our relationship, and accept whatever consequences come. You deserve more than being someone's secret. Before Natalie could respond, both their phones began buzzing. Then buzzing again. And again. They reluctantly separated, checking their devices. Natalie's blood turned to ice as she saw the messages flooding her screen. Someone had photographed Cameron entering her hotel room. The image was already circulating among retreat participants, and the rumors were vicious. Patricia, Cameron muttered, reading his own messages. She must have followed us. She's been trying to undermine me for 2 years. A sharp knock sounded at the door. Natalie, this is Patricia. I think we need to have a conversation. All three of us. Cameron opened the door to find Patricia holding her tablet, expression smug. Well, this is unfortunate. The CEO caught in a junior employee's bedroom in the middle of the day. The board is going to love this. I'm sure they will, Cameron said calmly. Just as I'm sure they'll be interested in your behavior as senior VP. You're required to report conduct that might harm the company's reputation, not create it yourself through harassment and privacy violations. Patricia turned her sharp gaze on Natalie. Dear, you should start packing. You won't survive this scandal. Standing ground. Natalie felt fear transform into anger. She had worked too hard, sacrificed too much to let this woman destroy her. Actually, Patricia, you should be worried. Natalie's voice was steady and strong. Taking unauthorized photographs of employees and distributing them to create workplace drama is harassment and a privacy violation. I think the board will be very interested in your behavior. Patricia's smile faltered. You have no proof I took that picture. Digital metadata says otherwise, Natalie replied, taking a calculated risk on a bluff. Every digital photo contains information about when, where, and what device created it. If Cameron wants to pursue this, our IT department can trace it to your phone in minutes. Cameron's eyes flashed with approval. She's right. And I absolutely intend to pursue it. Consider this official notice, Patricia. You're suspended pending a full investigation into your conduct, not just today but over the past 2 years. I've overlooked your attempts to undermine other employees for too long. Patricia's face flushed with rage. You can't do this. The board won't let you fire me over some girl you're sleeping with. I'm not firing you because of Natalie, Cameron said calmly but firmly. I'm firing you for creating a hostile work environment, for subordinating company interests to personal grievances, and for harassment. Your behavior today just gave you enough rope to hang yourself. You have 1 hour to leave the retreat, he continued. Security will escort you. After Patricia stormed out, promising lawsuits and board intervention, Cameron turned to Natalie with concern. Are you all right? I'm sorry you got pulled into her vindictiveness. I can handle Patricia, Natalie said, squaring her shoulders. But Cameron, she's right about one thing. The board won't ignore this. We need to get ahead of it. Agreed. I'm calling an emergency board meeting for tomorrow. We're going back to the city tonight, and we're doing this together. The journey home. The remaining retreat participants watched with barely concealed curiosity as Cameron and Natalie left together that afternoon, making no attempt to hide their connection. Rumors spread like wildfire, but Natalie found she did not care anymore. She was tired of hiding, tired of pretending her feelings did not exist. During the drive back to the city, they held hands in the back of Cameron's private car, discussing strategy. Cameron planned to present their relationship transparently to the board, offer to recuse himself from any decisions affecting Natalie's career, and emphasize that their connection had developed naturally over months of working together, not through abuse of power. What if they force you to choose? Natalie asked quietly as city lights appeared on the horizon. Cameron lifted her hand to his lips, kissing her knuckles gently. Then I choose you. Every time, without hesitation. Redwood Industries will survive without me, but I won't survive without you. That night, instead of going to their separate apartments, they went to Cameron's penthouse. Not to hide, but because neither wanted to be alone with the uncertainty of what tomorrow would bring. They sat on his balcony overlooking the city, talking until dawn. About their childhoods, their dreams, their fears. All the conversations they had never allowed themselves to have. Cameron told her about the pressure of inheriting a legacy, the loneliness of always having to be perfect. Natalie shared her struggle to prove herself in a world that saw her youth as a weakness. As the sun rose over the skyline, Cameron pulled her close. Whatever happens today, I want you to know that meeting you changed my life. You made me remember what it feels like to be human instead of just a corporate machine. Natalie kissed him softly. Then let's fight for that. Together. They arrived at Redwood headquarters at 8 in the morning, walking in together, hand in hand. The office erupted in whispers, but they ignored them all. The emergency board meeting was scheduled for 10 o'clock. 2 hours to prepare for the fight of their lives, the board convenes. The Redwood Industries boardroom occupied the entire top floor of the downtown headquarters. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of the city, but nobody was admiring the scenery today. 12 board members sat around the massive mahogany table, their expressions ranging from curious to openly hostile. Cameron stood at the head of the table with Natalie beside him. He had insisted she be present for the entire meeting, refusing to discuss their relationship as if she were an abstract problem to be solved rather than a person with her own voice. Gerald Winters, the oldest board member at 72, cleared his throat. Cameron, we've received some concerning reports from yesterday's retreat. Perhaps you'd like to explain what happened before we hear from others. I'd be happy to, Cameron said calmly. First, I want to formally disclose that Natalie Brooks and I have entered into a personal relationship. This relationship developed naturally over the past several months as we worked closely together on multiple high-stakes projects. I want to be absolutely clear that at no point did I abuse my position or offer career advantages in exchange for personal favors. One board member, Douglas Chen, leaned forward. With all due respect, Cameron, the power imbalance in this situation makes that claim difficult to believe. She works directly under you. Her entire career depends on your approval. Which is exactly why I'm proposing immediate measures to address that concern, Cameron replied. I'm recommending that Natalie report directly to the COO rather than to me. All decisions regarding her compensation, promotions, and project assignments will be made by a committee that doesn't include me. I'll recuse myself from any discussion that involves her career. That's a start, Gerald said thoughtfully. But it doesn't address the appearance of impropriety. How do we know this relationship hasn't been influencing your decisions for months already? Natalie speaks. Natalie had remained quiet, but now she stood. Her voice was clear and strong. May I address that concern directly? Several board members looked surprised, but Gerald nodded. Please. I understand your skepticism, Natalie began. You see a young employee romantically involved with the CEO, and you assume I've been given advantages I didn't earn. So let me lay out exactly what I've accomplished at Redwood Industries. She pulled out her tablet and projected data onto the screen. In my 4 years here, I've managed 17 major campaigns. 14 exceeded projected ROI by at least 20%. 3 became case studies taught at business schools. I've personally brought in 8 new Fortune 500 clients, representing $42 million in annual revenue. She clicked to the next slide. The European expansion strategy one presented yesterday wasn't assigned to me by Cameron. I developed it independently over 3 months, on my own time, because I saw an opportunity the company was missing. I then requested a meeting to present it, which I would have done regardless of who was CEO. Another board member, Helen Rodriguez, spoke up. That's impressive work, but how do we separate what you earn through merit from what you receive through favoritism? Ask the other executives, Natalie said simply. Pull the anonymous peer reviews from the past 4 years. Check my performance evaluations against objective metrics. Interview the clients I've managed. The data will show that I've consistently exceeded expectations in measurable ways. She looked directly at Cameron. Yes, he pushed me harder than other employees. He questioned my work more aggressively, held me to higher standards. But that wasn't favoritism. Pat. That was him trying to ensure nobody could ever claim I didn't deserve my position. Patricia's testimony. The door opened and Patricia Hammond entered, escorted by the head of HR. Despite being suspended, she had been called to give her account of events. Thank you for coming, Patricia, Gerald said. Please tell us what you witnessed at the retreat. Patricia's testimony was calculated and damning. She described seeing Cameron enter Natalie's room in the middle of the day, staying for nearly 30 minutes. She produced the photograph she had taken. She painted a picture of inappropriate workplace conduct and abuse of power. I've watched this favoritism for months, Patricia concluded. Natalie receives the best projects, the most attention, the greatest opportunities. Meanwhile, qualified executives with years of experience are overlooked. It's created a toxic environment where employees believe success comes from personal relationships rather than merit. That's an interesting perspective, Cameron said coolly when she finished. Especially coming from you. He nodded to the HR director, who pulled up documents on the screen. These are complaints filed by 8 different employees over the past 18 months. All describe a pattern of behavior by Patricia Hammond that includes intimidation, credit theft, and deliberate sabotage of colleagues' work. We've been building a case quietly to avoid disrupting operations. Patricia's face went pale. Those are lies from jealous subordinates. Really? Cameron pulled up more files. Because we have emails where you deliberately altered another executive's presentation to make them look incompetent. We have testimony from 3 assistants who you threatened with termination if they didn't spy on colleagues for you. We have documentation of you leaking confidential information to competitors. Gerald looked at Patricia with disgust. Is this true? I was protecting the company, Patricia insisted. Making sure the right people were in positions of power. You were protecting yourself, Cameron corrected. By any means necessary. The relationship between Natalie and me simply gave you ammunition you thought you could use. The vote. After Patricia was escorted out, the board deliberated for 2 hours. Cameron and Natalie waited in his office, hands clasped together, trying not to imagine the worst. Finally, they were called back to the boardroom. Gerald spoke for the group. We've reviewed the evidence, discussed the situation extensively, and taken a preliminary vote. The board recognizes that this situation is complicated and unprecedented for Redwood Industries. Natalie held her breath. However, Gerald continued, we also recognize that both Cameron and Natalie have acted with transparency once their relationship became serious. The measures Cameron has proposed to eliminate conflicts of interest are substantial and appropriate. Most importantly, the objective data supports Natalie's claim that her success has been merit-based. He looked at both of them seriously. That said, this relationship will be under scrutiny. Any hint of favoritism or impropriety will result in immediate termination for both of you. Natalie, you'll report to our COO starting next week. A special committee will oversee all decisions related to your career. Cameron, you're required to disclose any interaction with Natalie that could be perceived as professionally relevant. We can live with that, Cameron said, relief evident in his voice. There's one more thing, Helen Rodriguez added. We're instituting a company-wide review of our workplace relationship policies. This situation has revealed that our current guidelines are inadequate. We need clear procedures that protect employees while acknowledging that people who work together may develop genuine connections. Patricia's exit. The investigation into Patricia's conduct moved swiftly. Within a week, the evidence was overwhelming. She was terminated with cause, losing not only her position but her substantial severance package. She threatened lawsuits, but her attorney advised her that the documentation against her was too strong. Her departure sent a message through Redwood Industries. Workplace toxicity would not be tolerated, regardless of seniority or past contributions. 3 months later. Natalie stood in her new office, still amazed by the view. Not Cameron's view from the top floor, but a respectable corner office on the executive level. She had earned this promotion through a rigorous evaluation process overseen by the special committee. Cameron had not been involved in any aspect of the decision. Her new title was Director of International Strategy, with responsibility for the European expansion she had designed. 3 team members reported to her, and her budget was substantial. Everything she had dreamed of achieving. A knock on her door frame made her turn. Cameron stood there, looking slightly uncertain. They had been scrupulously professional at work for the past 3 months, following the board's guidelines to the letter. Do you have a minute? He asked formally. Of course, Mr. Mitchell. He smiled at the formality. They had agreed to maintain professional distance at the office, though their personal relationship had deepened considerably. They spent nearly every evening together, often cooking dinner in his penthouse or hers, talking about their days while carefully maintaining the boundaries the board required. I wanted to congratulate you officially on your promotion, Cameron said. I hear the committee was unanimous in their decision. Apparently, you made quite an impression during your presentation. I learned from an excellent teacher, Natalie replied. Someone who taught me never to settle for anything less than perfection. That teacher sounds demanding. Impossible, actually. But I wouldn't change a thing. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, both aware of the office cameras and the scrutiny they remained under. "There's a charity gala next weekend," Cameron said. "Redwood Industries is a major sponsor. I'm required to attend, and I'm allowed to bring a guest. Would you like to come with me? As my official date?" It would be their first public appearance as a couple at a company event. A statement that they had nothing to hide. "I'd love to," Natalie said. The gala. The grand ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers and elegantly dressed guests. Redwood Industries had purchased an entire table, and the company's top executives were all in attendance. Natalie wore a midnight blue gown that was sophisticated without being flashy. Cameron looked devastating in a perfectly tailored tuxedo. When they entered together, conversations paused, heads turned. But instead of whispers and judgment, Natalie saw respect in people's eyes. Over the past 3 months, the story of how they had handled their relationship had spread. Not through gossip, but through the official channels. The board's statement about transparency and appropriate boundaries had been shared company-wide. They had become an example of how to navigate a complicated situation with integrity. Throughout the evening, colleagues approached to congratulate them both. On Natalie's promotion. On their relationship. On handling everything with such professionalism. Gerald Winters found them during dinner. "I want you both to know that the board is pleased with how this has developed. You've set an important precedent. Workplace relationships don't have to be scandals if they're handled honestly. Thank you for giving us that chance," Cameron said sincerely. As the evening wound down and couples moved to the dance floor, Cameron offered Natalie his hand. "May I?" They moved together to the music, and Natalie rested her head against his chest. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked quietly. "Everything we had to go through?" "Not for a second," Cameron replied. "You know what I regret? All the time I wasted pretending I didn't love you. All those months of lying to myself about what I felt. I wasted the same months," Natalie admitted. "Convinced that admitting my feelings would destroy everything I'd worked for. And instead, admitting them made everything better." He pulled back slightly to look at her. "I'm more successful now than I've ever been. Not because of market performance or company growth, but because I remember what it feels like to be human. You gave me that." 6 months after that, the European launch exceeded every projection. Natalie's strategy proved brilliant, and within 6 months, Redwood Industries had established itself as a major player in luxury markets across 3 countries. Her team had grown to 15 people, and she was being courted by headhunters from competing firms weekly. She turned down every offer. One evening, Cameron cooked dinner in his penthouse. They had established a routine of alternating whose place they stayed at, both having accepted that they were essentially living together without making it official. After dessert, Cameron seemed nervous. He kept fidgeting with his wine glass, starting sentences and stopping. "What's wrong?" Natalie finally asked. "Nothing's wrong. Everything's actually perfect, which is what I want to talk about." He stood up and pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. Natalie's heart stopped. "I know we said we'd take things slowly," Cameron began. "That we'd be careful and appropriate and follow all the rules. And we have been. For 10 months, we've done everything right. We've maintained boundaries at work, we've been transparent with the board, we've proven that our relationship is real and lasting." He opened the box to reveal a stunning diamond ring. "But Natalie, I don't want to be slow anymore. I don't want to be careful. I've spent my entire life following rules and meeting expectations and doing what was appropriate. You're the only thing that's ever made me want to be reckless." He got down on one knee. "So I'm asking you, in the most inappropriate and impulsive way possible, will you marry me? Will you take a chance on building something permanent with someone who loves you more than any company, any career, any expectation?" Natalie was crying and laughing at the same time. That's the least romantic proposal I've ever heard. I know. I'm terrible at this. It's also the most honest thing anyone has ever said to me. She pulled him to his feet. Yes. 1,000 times yes. I'll marry you and build something permanent and be reckless with you. When they kissed, it felt like every kiss before it, coming home and jumping off a cliff simultaneously. The thrill of the unknown mixed with the comfort of absolute certainty. Epilogue, 2 years later. The wedding had been small and private, just family and close friends. The board had sent congratulations, but no one from Redwood Industries was invited. Some boundaries remained important. Natalie kept her position at the company, continuing to excel and earn promotion after promotion based purely on merit. Cameron remained CEO, but he had learned to delegate more, to trust his team, to acknowledge that the company could survive without his constant control. They bought a house in the mountains, not far from that hidden lake where everything changed. On weekends, they hiked the trails together, sometimes finding their way back to that magical place. One Saturday afternoon, they stood beside the waterfall, watching the sun paint the water in shades of gold and amber. "Do you ever think about that day?" Natalie asked. "When you found me here?" "Every single time I look at you," Cameron admitted. "I think about how terrified I was. How certain I was that admitting my feelings would destroy everything. And instead it saved everything," Natalie said. "Instead it gave me everything worth saving," Cameron corrected. He pulled her close, and they stood together in the place where their story truly began. Where fear had transformed into courage, where hiding had become honesty, where two people had chosen each other despite every reason not to. The waterfall continued its eternal cascade, washing away the past and promising endless tomorrows. And in that moment, standing in their hidden sanctuary, Natalie Brooks and Cameron Mitchell knew they had made the right choice. Love was always worth fighting for. Always worth the risk. Always worth choosing over safety and rules and appropriate behavior. Because sometimes the most inappropriate choice is the only one that leads to happiness.